Welcome to Kelly and Wrighty. We made it. That is it. The Premier League season is all wrapped up. And it was so close to being one of the best ever for you.
I know, Kels, there's always next season.
There is. We also have a huge breaking story for our season finale. Chelsea have appointed Mauricio Pochettino as their new manager on a 2-year deal. We'll bring you the very latest.
We'll also talk about Decore's screamer keeping Everton up on Survival Sunday. Sean Dyche says the Toffees can't be in this position again.
Everton stay up, but the Foxes' fairy tale is over. Just 7 years after winning the Premier League, Leicester are down. Leeds are also relegated. We'll discuss what went wrong for both clubs.
And we ask who will challenge Manchester City next season as they begin their preparations for the treble.
They already have their hands on the Premier League trophy. 89 points, the winning total for them. Arsenal falling 5 points short this year. Manchester United in third, 4 points ahead of Newcastle, who qualify for the Champions League for the first time in 20 years. Liverpool miss out. They'll be playing in the Europa League, much to the disappointment of Mohamed Salah, who was very vocal about that on social media. Brighton qualified for Europe for the first time in their history. And on the final day, Aston Villa made sure that they will be playing in Europe next season. Brentford's highest ever finish in the top flight as they finish in 9th place. Tottenham miss out on Europe. And it's a top half finish for Fulham. Working from the bottom up, Southampton relegated a few weeks ago now. It took to the final day, but Leeds United and Leicester will also be heading to the Championship next season. Everton staying up thanks to that fantastic goal from Abdoulaye Doucouré. Nottingham Forest were safe a couple of weeks ago after that victory over Arsenal. Bournemouth, having looked gone at one stage. Great job by Gary O'Neill. In 15th place is where they finished. West Ham in 14th place. They too flirted with relegation, but they've also got a European final to look ahead to. Then it's Wolves in 13th. Chelsea with their lowest ever top flight points total in 12th. And Crystal Palace, after appointing Roy Hodgson when they were in desperate situation, finish only just outside the top half of the Premier League table. Well, there's lots to discuss. We'll try and cover as much of it as we can, certainly the main talking points. But the main talking point at the moment is that Chelsea officially have a new manager. The worst kept secret in football is finally out in the open. Mauricio Pochettino will take over at Chelsea on a 2-year contract. Sean Wright Phillips and Darren Lewis are here to go through all of that with us. Poch to Chelsea, they're in danger of becoming likeable.
Because you do. Anybody, like we've met Poch. Poch, I don't know if you've met him in that down, but what a gentleman, what a nice guy.
That was your patch when he was there, wasn't it?
It was.
He's one of the nice guys, really one of the good guys. And I think it's an amazing appointment for him. They're very fortunate to have a manager of that calibre just out of a job, ready to go. I hope that he's negotiating a very good deal for himself in respect of control, because I think that with the players that they've got, the young players they've got there that need direction, they need coaching, and it will be tough. He will make it tough, and they will work hard. I think their pre-season is going to be very hard. I think that it's an amazing signing. I think Chelsea have finally done something good and right.
This is what Chelsea have said about it. They've released a statement on the appointment of Mauricio Pochettino, confirming that he'll take charge from the beginning of the 23-24 season. It's ridiculous, we're heading into 2024. He'll begin his new role on the 1st of July on a 2-year contract, and the club has an option of a further year. So Lawrence Stewart and Paul Winstanley, who are Chelsea's co-sporting directors, have said his experience, standard of excellence, leadership qualities and character will serve Chelsea Football Club well as we move forward, or so they hope. The signs are there, certainly from Mauricio Pochettino's side, and certainly in terms of what he's done, barring a bit of difficulty at Paris Saint-Germain, which I think every manager who's been there has had. What do you make of the appointment, Sean?
I think it's a really good appointment, especially for Chelsea, but I was a bit confused at the time of his contract. I thought he would have had 3 years plus. I think to do the job that he's got to do going in there is going to be
especially
hard.
when they've got all the players on such long-term contracts. To bring a manager
Well,
in
that says to me then, Kels, Sean, maybe he's done that.
Yeah, it has to be 1, 2, because for me, like, first of all, he's got to come in, he's got to try and keep Mason Mount. I think that would be his first desire to try. Well, the club and the fans would want that. And then he's got to think about, OK, now this is my team. How do I move on the rest? Because they're on such big contracts. Nobody's going to take them as well as pay the fees. So this summer, I should imagine he would start work pretty much today to try and kind of sort it all out. But
And he needs a number 9.
I think, but Rom's coming back. I
Yeah,
think...
I'm talking about maybe going for Harry Kane.
That could happen. You never know. It's Poch,
No
isn't
way.
it?
As I was going to say to Darren.
No, I want to listen to you two.
But the thing is, like, Sean, there's no way that with everything that's happened with Poch, Harry Kane under Poch, how well he done under him, coming back, they need a number 9. You mentioned Romelu Lukaku, maybe that might happen, but there must have been a conversation somewhere along the line with Harry Kane.
You would think there should be a conversation, but then if Harry Kane leaves Spurs, he's only leaving to win trophies. Chelsea ain't guaranteed that next year, so what would be the point in that move?
I think Chelsea
Well,
will be
nobody's
challenging.
really guaranteed that, apart from maybe from City.
Yeah.
Nobody's really guaranteed that.
That's why he
and
can sit
they
there.
don't need Harry Kane.
But
They certainly don't need
That's
Harry
why
Kane.
he can sit there. So what's the word?
Smug.
Smug. Say something like that because they can think like that. But Chelsea with Mauricio Pochettino, and if I know we're just throwing it out there, and Harry Kane with the team that they've got, the young team, and Mauricio Pochettino is going to be, they're going to be challenging, no danger.
It's really, when you look at what he's done and where he's had success, and you look at the time at Spurs when they finished in second place, when they got to a Champions League final, and he did that by developing actually a young Harry Kane amongst them, young, talented players, and building a squad, building a real team ethos there. That was more difficult at PSG because not just of a kind of scattergun approach to assembling a team of Galacticos, which is painting in broad strokes.
Sure, yeah.
And then issues at board level. And then you look at Chelsea and think, well, there's been a kind of scattergun approach to buying players, and there may well be issues at board level. We hear that Todd Bowley's stepping back, but they need to get that side of things right in order to let him work, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right to make the point about PSG because a lot of people mistakenly suggest that he doesn't have what it takes to manage at big clubs. But I think PSG is a mess, really. They dominate the league, but they don't have a particularly good recruitment policy. They don't invest that much. I know Galtieri has had some young players, but I think it's very Galactico heavy at PSG. But if you think about the clubs where he's been successful, Southampton had one of the toughest defensive records in the Premier League. Luke Shaw, Jose Font, Virgil van Dijk and Nathaniel Klein with Victor Wanyama and Morgan Schneider in front of them. They were outstanding. And players were earning moves to big clubs off the back of the work they'd been doing with Mauricio Pochettino.
And interestingly, some of those players didn't look anywhere near the levels that they were at Southampton once they moved away.
Absolutely.
Especially.
And the significance of that is that he knows how to build a team. Within that team, you might not necessarily have superstars, but you'll have people who fit correctly into the tactical structure that he builds up. That's why I think, as you say, that if he goes to Chelsea, there isn't that much to do. They are still good players. What he will demand from them is commitment, values, work ethic, all of those things, which had plummeted under Frank Lampard. I'm sorry to say it, but Lampard just didn't command the respect of that dressing room. And you could see from some of the performances, which I think will be dramatically different under Pochettino, that the connection between him and that dressing room had been lost.
I mean, there's also mitigating factors in that group of players knew that it was a temporary arrangement.
Well, exactly.
They'll have heard all the rumours about Pochettino as well. And,
The one thing I say about, could they challenge for the title? Well, if you look at Premier League history, Leicester came from the clouds to win it. Arsenal this season came from nowhere to challenge for it. Liverpool in the season they were just touched off under Brendan Rodgers. They were 7th in the preceding season. And even when they won the title, they were something like 30 points behind City in that campaign. So it's not impossible for Chelsea without European football at all to have the focus to be able to do it. And like I said, at Southampton, best defensive record, or one of the best in the Premier League. At Spurs, first season, joint best defensive record with Manchester United in the Premier League. Second season, best defensive record outright. So that's the one thing. You look at the players that are at Chelsea at the moment, they've got some super defenders there. Super defenders. I think they are going to be formidable next season.
Yeah, and it is a team that, although they've brought in World Cup winners, although there's been a lot of money spent on these players, they aren't fully fledged superstars yet. They're still at a stage where they're mouldable and coachable.
And that's why getting Pochettino, who's come out of a dressing room where he's had to deal with serious egos, you know, to the point where you think, why would anybody take that job other than maybe, who knows, maybe for the money or something? Because it seems that you look at, you know, Emery there, Tuchel there, you know, Pochettino there, and he's coming into a dressing room where you can see these players are ready to go. They're ready to go. They're ready to challenge. They'll want to challenge. They're at a club that demand that, and they've got a manager now that will get them ultra fit, organised. And like I say, if they can get the right centre forward in the summer, then Chelsea will be challenging for the Premier League.
Can I ask? You've been a striker. You've been at Chelsea yourself. If you're Kane, would you go to Chelsea, where you've got a manager you've worked with before who's managed to get the best out of you, but you don't have Champions League football? Or do you go to Manchester United, where you do have Champions League football, maybe not as good a defensive base if you look at the players in both teams? How do you make a decision around that?
You know, the thing with me, you go first.
No, you go first.
Well, the thing with me is...
You just talk amongst yourself.
Because, you know, with Chelsea, he knows Pochettino. And he knows what he's capable of doing. And there is no Champions League, and that's probably going to have some bearing on the matter. But with Man United, who you can see as well, depending on who they sign, 17 points more than they got last season, with Harry Kane in the side, Man United are very, very close to something, very close to challenging, and they will splash. They will splash to get the right player. You know, this is why I feel like they are a team that go, OK, Daniel Levy, if you want 100 million for him, we'll give it to you. If I had to choose, I'd probably choose Man United.
Why?
Because I think that Man United are in the Champions League, and with a couple of signings with him, he makes the difference.
Yeah.
He makes the difference. With Chelsea, I know that Poch will get them going, but it might take them this season to get it going, and then next season they're ready to go. But I think that Man United probably, they're ready to go. If they could put someone like him in with a couple more, they're ready to go.
I'd like to see Kane go to Chelsea, but I think with it, it's too hard. I think not that many players do it, right? Spurs to Chelsea. Not a lot of players do it. So I think with his legacy, I don't think he'll want to mess that up if he's going to walk out the door. So the only place I can literally see him going is United. And I think that's suited for him. Like you said, I think Man United already off and running. Their improvement stages are already started.
Yeah, and Poch has such a big job to go into, given how Chelsea have performed this season. One of the issues has been the size of the squad. I mean, there have been reports of players not having anywhere to sit in the dressing room because there have been so many of them trying to get into team meetings. What would you want a manager to do in that situation if he can't offload everybody in the summer? Because that's going to be... I mean, it's easy to say he needs to sell 10 players. Yeah. It's another thing altogether to go into a market that knows that you need to offload players and that thinks, right, well, these are the 10 you don't want, so who's going to take them at the wages they've been on at Chelsea and the contracts they've been on at Chelsea? It's not practically an easy thing to do.
I think personally, I'm not a manager, but I think what he's got to do is he's got to go in there and say, right, these are my 24 players, and leave the rest to he has to focus on that. It's horrible to say.
So even have them training apart?
Have another coach train them. But I think that's what the problem I'd say Potter's had, is that in his time there, he was just training with everybody. You got subs when you're doing 11 v 11 in training, and normally it's just 11 v 11, no subs. You get your full run out and your full workout. But when you got subs, even as a player, it's demoralising. So for me as a player, if I was in that position, I'd say, look, clearly this isn't working out, so need to move on at some point. But for whatever reason it is, people never ever want to leave that place.
I think there are lots of players already who privately they've been saying, look, I'm leaving in the summer anyway. So there are lots of players who know that they want to go. Hakim Ziyech, for example, he was angry at not getting a move to PSG in the summer. There was also some players who they saw the writing on the wall at the start of the season. So Callum Hudson-Odoi went to Bayer Leverkusen because he saw that they brought in Raheem Sterling. And there were a number of players, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, there were politics involved in his not playing, but clearly he's going to move on as well. I think there'll be a lot of loans done to get players out. There are players who are simply not ready. That Fofana is potentially good, but there is nothing to suggest he's ready for the Premier League at the moment. And I think when I was at Spurs, covering Spurs and Pochettino was there, what Jesus Perez, his assistant, would tell us journalists was that he wants a young squad of players that are going to buy into everything he's trying to do. So the criteria for moving players on, if they're too old, if maybe they've got a bit of an attitude, if they're not team players, if they're not hard workers, there will be a set criteria that those players will have to meet if they are to stay in the squad. And as you say, he will pare it right down to around about 23, 24 players. The rest, it's really up to the club what they do with those players.
But also, that's if Mauricio Pochettino has the final say on who plays and who goes, or who's in that 24.
Well, to be honest, Chelsea's situation, to get a manager like him, like I say, they're very fortunate that he's available. He should have gone in there and got anything he wanted in his contract in respect of control. I think that he should go in and he needs to find out who's been doing what, probably have a chat with Frank Lampard about attitude, this, that, find out who needs to be, because I'm going to go with Sean. You need a 24, that's the block, and then you just have to be quite ruthless about the rest of the guys, and that's just the way it is. Because I think that as well, with a 2-year deal with an option, it doesn't seem like he's got a lot of time to, he needs to go in, see what he's doing, because he needs to get this team up to speed in the way he wants to play and how he wants them to operate as soon as possible. This is what he's got a pre-season. He's got a whole pre-season to get them ready, and I just think that he'll probably want to just cut away the deadwood as soon as he can.
And bring in a striker, and Harry Kane's been a thread throughout that conversation on Mauricio Pochettino. He's one of several players who've played at what could be